Greetings and God bless. So, I was just thinking about how there's this strange double standard where there will be these activists, but they're not really interested in um, the most vulnerable person in the situation, the person who just has limitations. What I notice about this new cancel culture activist community, and it's in anything, and I'm talking about pedestrians. Like these activists want a quaint life for themselves, so they have their car, they have their e-bike, they want to be able to ride on the sidewalk with the pedestrians aggressively, as an aggressive driver that they are, and they want the pedestrians, like the pedestrians are inconsequential, the pedestrians don't matter, but these activists that want to live in a quaint little place according to their own selfish needs could care less about pedestrians like legal right of way on the sidewalk, because that's what I find. I move from city to city, and it's always the person on wheels that's the priority. um, when they're, I mean, like even on Reddit, I got off of Reddit because I was pointing out that cyclists in New York City are killing people. They're going so fast, and they literally kill people in Central Park. And this is not allowed in the news. This isn't even allowed in the cycling community. The cycling community ignores this. They hide it, and they've just like to virtue signal that they choose to not drive their car, you know, on a when it's convenient, as opposed to the pedestrian or the person who takes the bus, who does it not out of a choice. They have no choice. I mean, they like just that they're like they just don't have the money to to pay for a taxi or do Uber or a space and the funds for an electric bike or an electric vehicle. Like it's so nauseating how sickeningly politically correct so many people are these days. Uh, I mean, in the past, of course, people were politically correct, but they were just, I think they were just a little less morally, or a lot less morally compromised, because the political correctness now is so hollow. And and I keep on like moving because I know, I can't change people. And um the conservatives, who are just like get a car, loser. So you can't change that. And then you got the liberal leftist Marxists now, who are like, oh, because of this color, you're evil, even though they're the same color. So even though I've been a lifelong pedestrian and I can't afford a car, I can't afford an e-bike, I don't have just all the things that you need for that lifestyle. So but still somehow I am like this invisible, irrelevant, inconsequential person, and more so because I don't go along with this Marxist erase the West, erase the people from that Middle Eastern country that begins with an I. You know, it's so, and it's so convoluted. It's so confusing dealing with this Marxist mentality these days, because I know people who are Jewish, but I'm thinking, oh, well, so are they pro-Palestinian? So do I have to like figure out some backflip of how to support, how to like, and I don't support, um, I don't support any of the provocateurs. I don't support any of the traitors to their own country, to their own people. I support the innocent people who are peaceful, trying to do their thing. And most people aren't even there. Everybody's just like this knee jerk thing, like neo German World War II kind of thing. Like even the friends of mine who are Jewish or know Jewish people or who are Jewish friends. I mean, I just so it's hard enough as a pedestrian with limited income trying to find a city to like survive in, and that's all I've been doing is just barely surviving or with a place I can afford. And then we have this Marxist insanity that infests the health food store, it infests the library, it infests the body workers, the healing arts practitioners, because everybody's just has this virus, this mental insanity. Their whole identity is this leftist ideology. Like the health food store, it's like like sex is it should be a sex toy shop, and health food store is the side gig because all they're promoting is sexuality. There's just sexuality flags everywhere, in their ear, on their shirts, whatever. Um, Same with the city. It's got to have the sexuality thing up. Got to have sexuality parades. Got to have sexuality at the library. And if you like I'm not trying to censor anybody, but I offer an alternative. Like there is a way if you want to just be in the paradigm, the traditional paradigm that every culture had, that every civilization had, that every tribe had, that there was a man and a woman. And yeah, there were some things that were peripheral, that were onesie twosie, but the onesie twosie people who were different did not get to take the traditional male and women and take their children and mutilate their children and make them into something else. Like even in cultures that did castration or female genital mutilation, it was an understood thing that there was men and women. Like there wasn't this gaslighting of the very fundamentals of humanity like there is now. So when you have millions of dollars or whatever, and you can take your trip to Spain, or you can take your trip to Thailand, or go on your yacht and hire who you want, and everybody's kissing up to you because you got $1 million, so you don't have to deal with this critical race theory, diversity and equity, inclusion, like you just don't have to deal with that to the same degree that you have when you have a limited income. You're riding the bus, you're walking on the sidewalk, you're going to the woke store, the woke library, the woke grocery store, the woke this, that, and the other thing, dealing with woke people on the bus, the woke bus driver. Like every public, important thing has been saturated in this cancel culture thing where people are enraged if you're pro-America, if you're pro-Constitution, if you're pro-freedom, and oh my gosh, if you're pro-Bible. Like they're going to start lynching Christians. And you know what will happen when that starts happening? People are like, oh, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. The creepy stuff that happened at the Olympics didn't happen. The assassination attempt didn't happen. Such and such doesn't happen. It's so, like, I keep on wanting to move to some parallel civilization, not the one that we're in right now, because like I'm like I have nostalgia for what it was like in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and it wasn't easy. But it was better. It was saner than what I have to deal with now. Like I'm always having to hold my breath when I'm talking to pretty much anybody. And then if I say anything negative to the friends who are up on, or not the friends, like one of my closest friends, then I'm considered as being too negative, and I have to have positive intentions, and I have to magnetize using law of attraction, which is BS. Because we're in this satanic hijacking. So no amount of me having positive thoughts is going to change that we're in a satanic world and we're in the end times. So I got a little sidetracked, but so it's hard for those who are on a budget, who want to be a pedestrian, who want to live in a walkable place with a grocery store that's nearby, that has, like, let's say, a post office and a library and, maybe like a decent, like, affordable restaurant nearby, that maybe a bookstore, uh, you know, and other kind of like essential stores or fun little, you know, places to go to a little gift shop. So those kind of places, so they're all snapped up be- because people who are investors, I guess, like, so the locals who have a lot of money, they bought up all the cool little houses that's in the cute walkable area, so they can rent them out for Airbnbs. So they're whenever there's a festival or something like that, they'll rent each room out for like $300. So they get, I don't know, they make like $1,000 in every couple days during the high festival times. And so they don't rent out to long-term renters because they get a lot of fast money quickly. And so there's like no vacancy rates. Like, so many places I moved to, there's like no place, no. And I've moved to Iowa, I've moved to Virginia, I've here in Arkansas, I was in South Dakota, I was in Montana. Like, these places that you don't that are not New York City, that are not San Francisco, that are kind of a hassle, out of the way, not that great. I mean, like, compared to the how wonderful New York or San Francisco is, where I lived, even Portland was all right. And Portland, yeah, no vacancy. Like, and like, I look up statistics and they're like 10% vacancy rate. I'm like, that's ridiculous. Somebody is manipulating that data, because nowhere in several states that I've been to and states that I've tried returning to, like, I grew up in New York City, nothing's available. And I've tried roommate situations and stuff, and that's hard as you get older. Uh, like, it's people in their 20s want to live with people in their 20s, and that's totally understandable. And I don't know how people in their 50s are managing when they have like a limited income. Um, and so it's impossible. It's like near impossible to find an affordable place that's walkable, that has grocery stores. And what I notice is grocery stores are closed out. Like, like, when I was in Rapid City, South Dakota, there was a grocery store, a huge grocery store, that had been downtown, like fairly close to downtown, but it was closed out. And it was just so weird. And there was like these two rinky-dink health food stores, totally overcharged. I paid for an apple $5 one time. I didn't realize because they hid they the pricing LED thing was broken, so they didn't want you to see how crazy, how they were gouging you for $5 for a stupid apple. That was a bad apple as well. It was like all mealy, everything. It's such an offense. So, so terrible. And people are like, well, you're supporting local. You know what? I'm not here to donate. I'm not in a position to donate to your charity. I'm just trying to buy something healthy, and I want to buy it, but I don't want to have to be donating. I don't like this strong arming of like thinking you can dip into my pocketbook because you just want it. And it's just it's so challenging to exist, and it's so unfair. And people are offended when you point it out. Like, what is going on here? It's like this you know, and I'm thinking that everybody must be corrupt. Everybody must be on the take somehow. And so they must assume that you are as well. And so when they're trying to steal from you, like I went to Walmart, got some money out at the register with the cashier, and he pretended like he didn't hear me just say I'm taking money out. And so he was going to keep my $40 if I didn't insist on getting my cash back. Like, anyways, so and I'm in Arkansas. I'm thinking, oh, I'm closer to the Bible Belt. I'm somewhat near the South. This is like I'm in the most woke, um, catty, mean girl, clicky, provincial place, and add to that the cancel culture, the woke, self righteous identity that's taken over white people in America. So I'm dealing with this. I don't know if there's like this hazing thing that goes on in Arkansas of women trying to dominate the new woman who comes in, and so you're supposed to like grovel and try to, I don't know, get them to like you or something like that. And I'm just like, I'm here to do my business. I'm just here to do what I'm here to do. I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to kiss up to somebody. I'm not here to ask you to tell me what I should be doing. And I expect those around me to be professional and to take care of their own business. But that's not what I found. I found the least professional and the most like nitpicky kind of women here in like I'm in Northwest Arkansas, and it's um, and I don't know, maybe it's because of the lockdowns 2020 and onward. Maybe that's made so many people insane. Yeah, I think add that where I'm like, oh, is there going to be another? When I see people starting to wear masks again, I'm like, yeah, oh no, like what do the because the people who are into this cancel culture, self-loathing, like hating their whiteness, hating their Americanness, like they're the biggest pro injection, pro suffocation, pro distancing, pro burning things down. They're the first people for it. They're pro men in women's bathrooms, men in girls' bathrooms, men in the locker rooms, women's locker. Like there's no women's spaces anymore. There's no women's bathroom. Like that's that's what I that's the fact that we have to understand is there's no, like, everything's a man's bathroom. If a man walks into the girls' room, it's the parents' fault because they need to know that there's no girls' bathroom anymore. There's no women's bathroom anymore. When the new library in Denver, Colorado, there's no women's bathroom. It's the men's room. Women are just going into the men's room. Yeah, there's a baby changing station in the men's room. And everybody's so brainwashed they don't see that there's any problem with that. So, and then they're like, you shouldn't homeschool your children because we want them for because we've got to sexualize them is really what's going on. It's really straightforward. So that's another thing is it, and the thing is I moved to the South. I thought this was the South, but um, like when I was in Virginia, I went to a Southern Baptist church, and it was like they were playing like these drums, sitting on the drum, playing this drum, and doing like these musical, like operatic performances, uh, with a shortened message from the pastor. And I've been in Iowa where there's all this Freemasonic stuff going on. It's just it's I don't know what to make of it. I don't remember civilization being so hostile before, like, I mean, especially before 2020. And people are so into this Marxist cult. So many are into this Marxist cult. But it's people who are well off, and um, they're sheltered, so they don't realize how hypocritical this Marxist thing is. They don't realize how destructive this Marxist thing is, this mentality. Because when I went to South Dakota, and I'm walking to the grocery store, I'm walking to the laundromat, because there's no bus that went to these directions, and um, and so I'd be accosted by people who were drunk and tweaking and in groups, and they would demand reparations of me multiple times when I'm alone, where they corner me at the crosswalk when there's traffic the other way. So, and the city put up signs, you don't have to give change to homeless people. So, like, and I've heard that here in Arkansas that people are driven from reservations to the downtown to shake people down, shake tourists down or locals for money. And that's what I experienced when I was in South Dakota. And so there's this Marxist movement in South Dakota called Land Back. And I didn't understand what it was. Like, my mom was from South Dakota. You know, I didn't really know much about stuff that was going on other than the mainstream narrative, that evil settlers came and took the Indians' land. So when I first got there, I met this native guy, and he was like, "We own all of this land," and he's basically showing all these, he's like, all these people's houses and all these stores and all these roads, that belongs to us. That belongs. And I'm like, I don't think you guys are paying the property taxes. I don't think I don't think you guys are paying the mortgage, right? I didn't ask that, of course, because that's not what we're allowed to do in this woke Marxist thing. So then the longer I lived in South Dakota, I learned that these land back people are paid like hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're protected by the police, by the justice system, and then they terrorize the local business owners. So it's really messed up. And I personally experienced it myself. And that's the thing is, people who are Marxist, they're like, anybody that complains, it's just this intellectual exercise. But I'm like, no, this has been my personal experience. Marxism doesn't work for people with limited income who don't drive a car. Marxism works for deluded, insecure, guilty people who feel guilty people, who are living in the suburbs and have a lot of money. Because and I guess they're thinking, they're not thinking, but they just assume, if I believe in Marxism, just like I take this pill, it's going to make everything okay. And and it does take a while to figure out political systems and beliefs and all that. I understand, it's taken me a long time. I don't care about politics. I'm not interested in it. I'm just forced to look at it because I'm having to deal with it every day, and with people, like people being insane and dangerous outright. Like at the library, they're promoting sex change operations because that's the new income stream for the local Blue Cross Blue Shield. Because it's a 0% effective surgery, because you don't have an actual born at birth reproductive system. an elimination system, urinary tract. You don't have the original one that somebody else was born with, somebody of your out. You don't have that original one. You have some slapdash thing that look at who's a surgery. Look up psychopath, sociopath, like what person, top person of all industries are the psychopath. It's a surgeon. So you have this person with a mental disorder that's like, yeah, we're gonna change you, but you can't have the original at birth equipment installed into you. No, it's a 0% success rate because people are thinking, oh, I'm gonna have that original. Yeah, they because people who are having a struggle have some sort of cognitive issue going on, and so they're not thinking straight. And you know, this is just my observation, and there's plenty of people talking about it. People who are detransitioning, people who are regretting the operation, people who are saying that they're not healing, that they can't go to the bathroom, and you have to go to the bathroom multiple times a day as a healthy person. So when that function is painful and not working, uh, because when you think you're going to just swap out some body part, like folks, like that's a fact. And so so the local library is pushing that. And so I was like, I found of like an ideal civilization, and it was like one man, one woman, clean air, so no chemtrails in the air, no 5G towers, trees, and children playing outside, not on their devices. And um, and so that was considered violence to the library, to the library employees who um, kept making incident reports against me without telling me. So they didn't speak to me. They didn't give me email, no paper trail. And then they started following me and trying to entrap me. So, and this is in Arkansas, like this is like, I thought I was in the South. And maybe that's the problem with the South. Maybe the South was never about what we thought it was. As somebody from New York City, the South was a scary place. It was considered like backwards and hateful. But what I'm realizing is that maybe it's like this mean girl. I mean, I know it sounds so crazy, but like the bullying, like women are really mean, and there's just something demonic. Like women can be more demonic than men. Like I think it is my belief that Hitler was a biological female, along with a lot of major male actors in our history. I think were female, and that the like presidents, look at all the wives of the presidents look distinctly like men, just with like a bonnet and stuff like that. So I don't. And why that is because there's this Illuminati, pagan, satanic influence that set America up. So um so yeah, it's just it's a lot to navigate. And like places like the library are, you know, they're pimps for the sex change operation, for Blue Cross Blue Shield to do sex change operations for children. And children are very impressionable. A lot of children want to please. So if their parent wants them to change their gender, or if their teacher wants them to change their gender, if the doctor wants them to change the gender, and if the kid doesn't have like a strong sense of self, kid will be like, okay, let's mutilate me, if it's gonna make you happy. And I just saw that a lawsuit is being filed against, I think it was the hospital and doctors, and that's possibly what's going to happen with teachers and parents. And the thing is, this local library here, the Fayetteville Library of Arkansas, is suing the state to not be liable for the harms that comes from their pushing this agenda. And I'm calling this agenda the LBGT agenda. So they want to promote, they want to sexualize children, they want to groom children for pedophilia, and I consider these sex change operations of children to be pedophilia. It's a type of human sacrifice, because it's very painful, and it forces them to be a patient to the system that maimed them in the first place. It's a terrible. It's so satanic. It's torture, because you have to go to your torturer for help, and I think the people who are happy get powerful pain medications, and so these people are addicted to opiates, and they're happy. They're like, oh yeah, just give me more drugs and I'm gonna say it's good. Oh, it's fine. But some people don't want to be on drugs. They don't want to be a drug addict. They don't want to deny what harm occurred to them. They don't want to lead people to their own, like they don't want to lead vulnerable children to hurt themselves as well. Like two wrongs don't make a right. And maybe there are some people who are malevolent, like just malicious, and they want, because they've suffered, they want other people to suffer. So maybe it's that misery loves company. But so that's what in 2024, August 2024, in the South, what I'm dealing with. So I don't have like a little gated community, and I meet people and they're like, yeah, those they loathe conservatives. They're like, they have a big problem with conservatives. And honestly, I haven't met a staunch conservative. I've talked to ex-military, Vietnam, vets, like combat veterans, and who are like, oh yeah, we have a sex change place. When I was at the Denver airport, and that guy was like, yeah, we in Trinidad there's this major sex change operation place, and I'm like, that's a bad thing. He's like, well, it's got to make money. So it's very, I mean, like, where are the staunch offensive conservatives? Because even when I am in a patriot group, I don't meet them. Like, people are these like lukewarm, spineless, like liberals. They might as well be. So it's yeah. I mean, but I meet leftists who are like, yeah, there are these conservatives, like, as if, I mean, like what like here in Arkansas, I have seen 2 pro-Palestinian protests, where, like, when I was just trying to like use the sidewalk, and they wouldn't move out of my way when I was trying to walk, or like on the sidewalk. Like, there was like 50 people, and there was this hostility, because I think they expected me to be like, they expected me to be like, oh, good job, or whatever. Like, they're in my country. These terrorists are on my sidewalk, and they won't let me use the sidewalk. That's actually illegal. That's false imprisonment. They could go to jail. Like, all 20 of those people that were willfully obstructing my passage could have gone to jail if I knew more about it, and how to file the paperwork and so forth. And fortunately, I just navigated around that. But like, that's what's happening in Northwest Arkansas. When I first moved here, I was going to the laundromat, and I was crossing the street, and this guy starts yelling. This black guy, he had this like LED screen on his dashboard of his car. He was screaming and screaming, calling me a white bee, you know, and I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna ignore this crazy man because is he gonna get out of his car? Like, what did I? And he was yelling at me for walking on the sidewalk. He was yelling at me for using the sidewalk. A black guy, and he was calling me a white bi. So this is Arkansas, and I'm sure I know I used to have liberal friends that think that's a good thing, that think that I should be terrorized, as if it makes up for stuff that happened in the past to whoever, to strangers that they themselves didn't even know. So just because there's a high walkability score, that doesn't mean that the place is actually really walkable or worth walking around. Like, you need to have that grocery store walking distance, the laundromat walking distance, the library, the post office, the Federal Express, UPS, or whatever walking distance. And it seems like whenever there is something walking distance, there's going to be people on fentanyl and like living on the sidewalk every 10 feet. Like when I was in Denver, and it's not, it's terrible. It's terrible seeing the pathos of addicts, and it was also a mile high. And that's another thing. Like, what's the quirk of the location? Because in Denver, since it was 1,000 feet altitude, there was less oxygen, and everybody was smoking pot like all the time. You'd be on an elevator, somebody smoking. You'd be in a building, somebody's, like in your own office, somebody smoking. Waiting at the bus, waiting at the light, somebody smoking. Waiting at the bus, inside the bus, people are smoking. Like, and it was like, it seems like it was deliberate. Like, okay, there's a good crowd, I'm going to start smoking and puff out all of the disgusting air. So it took me like, I don't know, a while to like detox from all the secondhand smoke that was going on when I was in Denver. So my point is that when there is something walkable, for some reason, that's where the drugs and the illegals are. And the thing that's interesting is the illegals that I saw, they weren't following traffic rules. They had a brand new car, and they were aggressive. When I was like, I'm trying to cross the street, they were like, you want to fight? So that's another thing, is there's invaders that are trusted agents of the public good are bringing in, and like for some reason they bring them to the city, like the city centers. So I mean, if you're going to give somebody a house and a car, like put them in the suburbs or something like that. But no, they put them in the city, and they put them in that hotel. And what was interesting is, so there's like all these illegals in downtown Denver, but all these white men, white women, black men, black women who are homeless, mentally ill, addicts that were living on the sidewalk, that were all like messed up and stuff like that. But you would see these non-English speaking, didn't know one word of English. They had a brand new phone. They weren't even bothering to use Google Translate when they're talking to the waitress to get the milk they want for their coffee or whatever. So this incredibly entitled Mexican or illegal, because whatever country, like they won't even use their own Google Translate app with their $1,000 phone that they drove in their new car from the hotel, that somebody else paid for. And it's like they're like, Americans are here to serve them or something. And Americans are already, like, we're being pushed to the end of our rope. And we have been for, like, I would say past like 15, 20 years, speaking for myself. Like, things began to be like unmanageable. I mean, I would say I left like the conventional like office work, like working just to pay rent, lifestyle in 2000. I just couldn't handle the stress of the workplace, of bills. So I went to work at retreat centers where there was room and board, so I just didn't have to worry every month about bills and stuff. And so I guess for me, like about 24 years ago is when I started, like I just couldn't handle the demands, because the demands of work were not compensating for, like I wasn't getting compensated for what was expected of me. And I was dealing with chronic illness, and of course, like the medical industry could care less about sincere treatment of things like Lyme disease, and they don't help you with parasite infections and electromagnetic exposure and so forth. So yeah, and I went to doctors, and when doctors, 20, 30, 50 doctors blow you off and just tell you you just have a problem, and or you got to accept your diagnosis and just learn to deal with it, um, and then like everything is kind of conspiring against you, because so you have a fixed income, and everybody hates this color and blames you, even though they're this color, and they want you to be in their mental virus of self-loathing and hating the West and hating humanity, and putting people on a putting this imaginary notion on a pedestal, as if that's going to absolve them of their white guilt. uh, it's absolute insanity. Like, we're in this insane mental institution. And again, I say this over and over again, I'm amazed that we have electricity and running water and the internet, because there's so many crazy people that are in charge of everything, like along with like the DEI CRT requirements, of like, okay, we got to hire just anybody to look good on paper. So that makes it a lot harder to find a walkable place that's so that's safe, safe from the addicts and the mental illness, and then safe from the aggressive drivers who hate driving, I guess, and they hate pedestrians. Like, that's what I notice is, like, even those who claim to be activists hate pedestrians. Like, it seems like the people who are activists, they just want to be around with others who are drivers but activists. The activists don't really want the real people. And I suspect this was probably the case with like BLM and so forth, is they don't want a real person who has experienced oppression and is sincerely invested and focusing on healing and helping the innocent victims. I think people are maybe grifters or something like that, and they just like being provocateurs, being holier than thou, and just antagonizing people and trying to make other people feel bad. I mean, because I had this one friend, kind of more of an acquaintance, and she was like, yeah, you really need to read this book about white sensitivity or something like that. I forget, white fragility. And I'm like, I don't need to feel like to doubt myself, and also like question other white people around me. Like, everybody has their own little thing to do, and it's not skin color. I believe that all of these activist groups, it's really about classism, because when some wealthy, high, like CEO or movie star, music star or whatever, and they're from East India or Africa or, America or whatever. Like when 50 Cent comes in, or when Beyonce or whoever, when any famous, like black author comes in, like these people have gravitas, like they have an entourage, and nobody's treating them like the person you see at Walmart or whatever, like when you see crazy videos going on. So it's really classism that's the issue, but that's the Marxists don't want you to know this. The Satanists, the globalists don't want you to realize that classism is the issue, because the globalists are the biggest classists. And they show us this when they go to Davos, like when Taylor Swift goes to Davos, or not Davos, but when she travels, and when that little girl who said all those horrible things, that everybody, like the left really loves to be a masochist about. I forget her name, but all of these people have jets that they do more harm to the planet themselves than like all of us in a country do. But they're trying to make us feel bad. So yeah, somehow people are being hypnotized and they've lost their common sense. And when you're on a limited income and you're just trying to find a place that you can afford to live, where you can go to the grocery store, where you can go to the library and the laundromat without being hazed by this CRT, DEI, insanity, witchcraft, Satanism, and where it's like you're able to safely walk, you don't have to stumble over addicted homeless people sleeping on the sidewalk, prone, like totally taking up the whole sidewalk, or like in some places that have a lot of snow and rain, where it's like ice skating rink for 6 months out of the year. So it's really challenging. It's like I just don't know, or it's like super hot. And when I was in Iowa last summer, I think it was last summer, and they had this derecho, this terrible storm. And I guess maybe it was a bit like a tornado, but not really a tornado. But they lost like 60% of the tree cover. So it was so baking. It was just so, the sun was just so searing. When I was in Iowa, at this part, the city called Cedar Rapids. So when you're trying to walk, but then there's like extremes of heat, extremes of cold, where the ground itself is icy, or there's all these bodies, of addicts, like in their tents everywhere. Like when I was in Denver, that happened in when I was living in Portland years ago. In 2004 or so. There were people who were living in tents. But when I was in San Francisco, when I moved to San Francisco in 91 or so, 92, there were people, there were students at the university that lived in the park, that went to bed they slept at the park, but then they went to school, because that was the only way they could afford to go to school. So it's like these, the universities charge too much for students, and it's like these universities are investors. They have like all this money, and then they charge more. So these like universities aren't even real educational institutions. They're just these major investment organizations, and then landlords are charging crazy amounts to rent, and then with the whole Airbnb nonsense, and then like with transportation, like bus lines being pared down, removed, like Greyhound, shut down so many of its stations, and like different routes that were really helpful. Uh, it's like life is being made so much harder for those with a limited income. And I think like like people are like, we don't want people with limited income to live in our city. Um, and and I think they're like, that's going to stop the petty criminal. So, I mean, but the thing is, most cities have like big criminals. Most cities are doing crazy, corrupt things, like what was happening with the hospitals. And for each CV death, the hospital could get up to $500,000. So a hospital is not going to leave $500,000 on the table if they don't, they're going to try to make sure they get that $500,000 for a CV death. So there's all these criminals running around, and these criminals who are running around don't even think that they're criminals. They're like, well, I had to do that for my job. I had to kill that person for my job. And that's a lot of people who did that, who ended people's lives in some terrible ways. And they're just going to their brunch, on Sundays. They're going on their trip to Italy. They're buying their new house. They're getting the furniture and blah blah blah. And so cities are like, but we don't want people with a limited income to be able to get around our city. Like when I was in Virginia, I was in Norfolk, Virginia, and I was like, I wanted to go to the beach. And I was on the bus for 2.5 hours, and it was like it was going to be another like hour or half hour, and I had to get off to use the bathroom. It's like cities want to interfere with people with limited resources. They like cities engineer. They do everything they can to make it so people with limited resources can't enjoy the nice things that's nearby. Like the only place that's not quite like that is New York. And maybe, like maybe San Francisco, because you can take the bus just straight shot to the beach. But that's why certain cities are great cities, and like these stingy cities like Norfolk, like I have to take, I don't know, was it 2 buses? Like when a city is stingy and it's engineered, it's hostile towards pedestrians. When a city is hostile towards people with a limited income, they think that they're saving themselves money. They think that they're saving themselves grief. But when a city is strategically hostile towards people with limited income, it it interferes with the good things that person might have to lend. Because New York is great. It's still a great city. I mean, it's crazily overpriced, so people can't live there anymore. A lot of people, unless they're human trafficking and dealing drugs or funded by their parents or grandparents or something like that, or the globalist deep state, with that whole DEI CRT stuff. Um, but the reason why places like New York or San Francisco or Chicago are great cities is because it's like people just it hasn't been engineered um, to interfere with pedestrians getting around. And I know these cities are having difficult times now, but the reason why they had such a good run is because of like they weren't obstructing a decent person getting around the city. Like in New York, like you need to have a good subway or a good bus or decent, cab service to get to school and, to get to work. And when like I'm in Northwest Arkansas, and it's like the buses go in this whole crazy trajectory, like hither and yon, very confusing, and it's hard to even know what's going where, when. If there's 3 different apps, and there's only one that's maybe accurate. And somebody was telling me I shouldn't think so much, and it's like, I want to go to the store, and when there's it take like I was using the wrong app the first 4 months that I was here, maybe even longer, maybe it was like 6 months. And then the Google Maps app was like partly wrong. And then I found the correct app, and it's this complicated thing that you have to like try to understand, wrap your mind around, and figure out how to use. So, so this, so the system is like has all this messed up parts in it. The actual accurate thing is messed up and confusing. And then I'm told I think too much. Like, what the heck am I supposed to do? Like, I'm used to a city, you just go to the bus stop, something's going to be there in 15, 20 minutes. You know that there's going to be a lot of buses. And and now it's like this, you're supposed to have an app, and the app isn't even going to work sometimes because there's satellite problems and stuff like that. And then people are like, "Oh, there's nothing we can do." And yet, like people blame me for for thinking about it, for having a thought about it. And I don't know, maybe people are just on their drugs. Maybe people are just on their opiates and their whatever Prozac or their hopium, and they don't like it when there's a squeaky wheel. But my concerns are facts. They're measurable. They can be confirmed by other people, and you know everybody is insulated by the drugs that they use, by the car, by the living in a suburb somewhere, by the money that their trust fund gives them or something like that. But um I'm just saying, like, it's not easy trying to find, like, when I look at Reddit or online to try to find a decent city, people are like, oh, such and such is walkable. But when you're dealing with uh, this woke culture, uh, or like that cities for some reason are trying to remove, like, they want 15-minute cities, but then the grocery stores like an hour away. Like, that's what's so weird. So is it going to be Soylent Green? Is everybody going to be expected to live off of bugs in that grocery store that's like a mile and a half, 2 miles away? Is that going to just be for the prison warden and the prison guards? Because, like, the cities I look at that I moved to, the grocery store's like a million miles away. Not a million miles away, but it's far away. And like when I was growing up in New York, we were a few blocks away from a grocery store. Like, one of the places that I remember from my childhood. Um, so yeah, it's there's a lot of factors to take into account. And I've, like, when I moved to Montana, I thought it was going to be a more conservative place. I thought South Dakota was going to be more conservative. You would think Virginia, uh, Iowa, but there's like this virus of Marxist leftism that has been infesting the heartland for decades. Well before I went to my leftist college. And yes, there are some conservatives, but like I was watching something online, and it was about some place in Texas. And so conservatives have been so browbeaten and shamed that they're apologizing for our Christian values. And Christians and conservatives should have morality, should stand for our morality. And It's like the Marxist leftists trying to brainwash us for having morality is a problem, and it's a problem that conservatives and Christians need to figure out, because we don't have to apologize for being pro-life and being pro gender, um, like when God made man, one woman, and that was good. Like biblical gender, you know, biblical family values. Like, we don't have to apologize that you don't, you know, rape people and you don't steal from people, you don't steal other people's children. We don't apologize for that. Like this, that is why people come to America. And yes, America is corrupt as anything, but still, like, there is this understood thing: you're not supposed to kill, you're not supposed to steal, you're not supposed to rape. Unlike other countries where it's not even a thought that's a problem. So yeah, I think that relocation is much more complex than a pre-industrial city or whatever, because we've got this mess, this psychic mess of the CRT thing and this BLM stuff, um, and like the hypocrites, the the pro-bike hypocrites that bully pedestrians on the sidewalk. Like, uh, and what? And the thing is, there's so few pedestrians out there, and I guess maybe there's so few that have the energy to speak up about it, that it seems like we're a minority. But still, I think, like, being that we all are walking or in a wheelchair, if we're out in a wheelchair, um, but we're all on the sidewalk going from a building, even if only to a car or a bus, that pedestrians really should have the right of way on the sidewalk, on the zebra crossing when it's our light. But I have had even friends try to chastise me about that, like that I need to, like, ask permission to cross the street, from every person's, like, look at every person and get permission from the driver to cross the street. It's just too much. And I love New York because you have 20 people crossing the street with you, and drivers in New York are more used to stopping for a pedestrian, whereas places everywhere else. I mean, San Francisco is pretty good, and some areas of Portland are actually good, but um, like everywhere else, drivers aren't used to seeing pedestrians. They're not. They're used to pedestrians giving drivers right of way. And the thing is, like when it's like here in Northwest Arkansas, it's like you get like 3 seconds to cross the street. So I can't give a car the right of way, because I'll have to wait another like 3 minutes for the driving cycle for me to be able to cross. And drivers are so enraged and impatient and think I am so insignificant and irrelevant. Like, they think they have a right to take my time allotted to cross the street with their turn, their reckless, dangerous turn that's going to try to kill me. And I was at a meeting yesterday, and we were saying, if there was like, um, like, people don't like to drive, if there was good public transit. But the thing is, like, I think there's people who think they're too good to take public transit. And even though they hate driving, they would never take the bus or the train because they think that's for poor people. They think that's bad people are there. And you know what? There's bad people driving. I mean, I've known people who are like cognitive, severely cognitively impaired, so much they could not even speak English in a way that you could understand. And these people are driving. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I guess it's just, there's just a lot of untreated mental illness out there. And when you're on a limited income, um, you have to deal with a lot of it. And unfortunately, this mental illness has been manipulated and enabled and pushed by the government as well as globalists. So it's this top down mental infection. And it just makes it really hard to just walk around and exist. Like I'm just trying to get to my grocery store. I'm just trying to get to the laundromat. Um, I'm just trying to do my thing, and I have to deal with um, enraged, defensive people with an agenda. And I just want to find, I just want, and the thing is, these enraged, defensive people, they want to live in a quaint area, and they do so the sex flag is up everywhere I go to. There's this beautiful mansion, and they have the sex flag up. And I'm like, how do they afford this, probably $500,000 mansion, when they're working retail? Like when I was in Rapid City and when I'm in here in Arkansas, like, you know, so, and I just think it's some sort of globalist thing. Because when I was in South Dakota, I mean, when I was in San Francisco in the 90s, like people were working. There was a lot of people. There's a lot of variety of people, and um, and the gay culture, they did hate women, but they, if you were exceptional, they would let you be friends or something like that. And I just figured something bad happened to them, so I didn't take it personally. But nobody was trying to molest anybody, like anybody's kid. Nobody claimed to have entitlement to anybody else's kid. Nobody from the sex community was trying to profit off of a kid, traffic children like it is now. Like now has it's been normalized in the United States. Like at the library, they're promoting the sex change operation, the Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's trying to open up a new income stream because cancer, like people are healing themselves from cancer. People are healing themselves from autism because they're finding all these natural ways. They're removing the poisons that are, they're avoiding things that are put into the bloodstream that scramble people's brains and scramble their DNA and damage their immune system. So hospitals okay, we got to do this exchange because then we're going to have a patient for life, And I know people who are into getting their cancer treatments, and so they go every month to get a new cancer treatment. And they're upset that they're going, so they don't bother to look. They don't bother to look why they keep on getting cancer. And they're asking the people who profit from their cancer, why is this happening? And so the cancer person's the cancer doctor's I don't know why. And so the person won't look into why they have cancer. They won't make any adjustments to prevent their skin cancer. And they're, and they're just in this vicious cycle. So now the new thing is maiming children and then having the lifelong dependent, mutilated children be the patient. And I'm like, Jesus has to return soon because it's just a nightmare. It's like a living nightmare. But the Bible does say life is but a vapor. So even though it seems like it's been a long time that one has been here, compared to eternity, it's a vapor. So it's just it's a very challenging situation, and uh, the people who are supposedly your friends, or allies about like being pedestrian friendly cities, like like they have cars, they ride bikes fast on the sidewalk, they've got their e-bike fast on the sidewalk, and they're they bully the pedestrians on the sidewalk and expect that should be okay, because there's like this classist thing. It really comes down to this classist thing. So there's this classist mentality, and the person's like, if I'm on a e-bike, I'm on a bicycle, I'm on a scooter, I am a higher class than you. And if you're a pedestrian, like, this is the sick mentality, the evil mentality. People are like, if you're a pedestrian, get out of my way on the sidewalk. And that's not right. And what's weird is, like, I was talking with somebody last night, and they were saying, well, we need to have a sidewalk, we need to have a bike lane, we need to have a road. And I'm like, in the past, like when I lived in Oregon, there were like bicyclists were on the road, and they were just treated like a car most of the time. And of course, there were reckless drivers who, would blindside, like wouldn't look, and, almost have an accident or had an accident with a cyclist. But when bike lanes take up all the traffic, so then there's less parking, and people are scared. Like when I was in Missoula, Montana, people were too scared to use the bike lane. So there's just like a near empty bike lane, and then more congested traffic. There's already problems with traffic. I mean, it just doesn't seem to make sense. And when I was in New York, so they would have these bike lanes, and these new arrivals are driving the bikes like bats out of hell, and it's very dangerous. And they could care less about pedestrians. Is when and um so yeah, it's pedestrians really have it the worst pretty much everywhere. And when a place is walkable, it gets taken over by cyclists and scooters and e-bikes. So those ruin how pedestrian a place is, because they just make it very dangerous. And they clutter up the sidewalk, like here in Northwest Arkansas, and I saw this when I was in Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Virginia. Like they clutter the sidewalks, so it's just like this mess on the sidewalk. It's like a trip hazard, and and they do it on purpose. Like, I think the people who are distributing the scooters, like they put it in right in the, like they make it so you almost trip. Um, it's just, and I think it's like entrepreneurs are just like, use my scooter. So when a place is a nice walkable place, it gets infested by cyclists and bicyclists and scooters that don't that saturate the sidewalk. And so it's basically a scooter car place, when it's meant for pedestrians. And the activists are like defending the scooters and the e-bikes because that's what they use, because these activists are really displaced drivers, and they just want the comfort of being a driver while on the sidewalk, and that's called a wheelchair. And I've been where, like when I was living in in San Francisco, and there were people on wheelchairs driving way too fast, and they were very aggressive, very hostile, to pedestrians. So there's just something up with people on a motorized vehicle amongst pedestrians. And I'm just like, I want a pedestrian mall where nobody's riding a bike or a scooter or e-bike. Because when I was in Denver, there would be people, like multiple people, like 5 people on scooters going really fast right towards you. And they just expect you to get out of their way because they're bullying you. They're threatening you. They're threatening you with bodily harm. It's like pointing a gun at you. Same thing with e-cyclists or bicyclists. They're going really fast at you, and they just expect you to jump away. And it's just so when you think you're moving to someplace that's pedestrian friendly, not for long, because the jerks who are displaced drivers, they're like, oh, there's all this this isn't a sidewalk, this is a bike lane. Like, there's these obnoxious people who think that the sidewalk is a bike lane. And it's like it's the thugs, it's the college students, and it's the white collar, holier than thou liberals who are like, I'm doing the world a favor by being on this e-bike, on this bicycle, get out of my way. Like, I'm doing my part. I'm saving the planet while I threaten you to run you over, crash into you. So that's this like ugly underbelly of of this bike culture, is that they have no they ignore the pedestrians, they bully the pedestrians, and they consider pedestrians irrelevant. Like, we're just garbage. We're just invisible. So that's kind of the problem with this bike culture mentality. And like, they ruin sidewalks when you're just trying to get somewhere. Like, when I first moved to Portland, Oregon, the first 5 months I got crashed into on the sidewalk, from behind, from around the corner, from like just over and over again. Literally crashed into my body, people with their bikes. Like, they just came out of nowhere, and I was on the sidewalk. Like, what? So it's like, what is a pedestrian supposed to do? Get a car? Is that what I'm supposed to do? Or, it's like, even the cyclists don't allow a pedestrian to be safe on the sidewalk. So I'm like, if you're going to use the sidewalk and make the sidewalk dangerous, then just go have a car. And if you can't afford a car, then don't make it dangerous for me on the sidewalk. But people who are on wheels, there's just something missing. So anyways, this was definitely a long-winded talk, but does anybody relate to how unpleasant it is, how dangerous it is, how thoughtless and hostile cyclists are? I mean, it's already hard enough when you're passing by a driveway and drivers are like going to kill you if you don't hurry up and cross the driveway when you're on the sidewalk, or when you're trying to cross the street. Drivers are like, your life is meaningless. And then you're on the sidewalk, and then you have these aggressive cyclists and e-bikes and scooters that are trying to get you there. And it's like, I just want a pedestrian friendly place, and a pedestrian friendly, not where I'm having to contend with scooters and e-bikes and cyclists, bat out of hell cyclists dominating or coming out of nowhere. And it seems like the only answer is having crowds of people around you. because the cyclist is generally, when there's like five or a big group of people, the cyclist generally makes a way around, or the five people on the scooter don't totally crash into the whole group of people, but they target the single person to get out of the way, and that's just it's unfair. It's unjust. So yeah, it just makes it hard. That adds this other crazy layer to it. And and the thing is, like, being a pedestrian is hard enough because you're dealing with the seasons, the harsh sun, the icy ground, the 60-mile-an-hour winds, you know. So it's already hard enough as it is. And you know, just adding this 21st century stuff, it's very challenging. So does anybody relate to what I'm talking about? If so, share your experiences in the comments, and like, how do you handle it? And yeah, it's very important to, like, try to chill out and do some essential oils and calm down after a difficult time walking on the sidewalk. And maybe, yeah, it's just good to appreciate when you don't have to deal with icy sidewalks or aggressive um, people telling you owe them reparations and stuff like that. So thanks for watching. God bless.